My wife finally admitted she lied about our baby's paternity after her family threw a celebration for the real father at our son's birthday party. My name is Connor, and I'm 31. I've been married to my wife, Jade, for 6 years, and we have a son named Liam, who just turned 4 in September, or at least I thought he was my son, until Jade's brother Marcus decided to make an announcement at the birthday party that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. Jade and I met when we were 23 at a mutual friend's wedding. She was a bridesmaid, and I was a groomsman, and we hit it off immediately. We dated for 2 years before I proposed and got married 6 months after that. She got pregnant with Liam about 8 months into our marriage, and I was over the moon excited. I'd always wanted to be a dad, and the timing fell perfect since we just bought our first house in a neighborhood with good schools. The pregnancy was normal, and Liam was born healthy in September 4 years ago. He had dark hair like Jade and green eyes that I thought came from my side since my mom has green eyes. Jade's whole family has brown eyes. So I figured it made sense genetically. I never had any reason to question paternity because Jade and I were solid, and she'd never given me a reason to distrust her. We had the kind of marriage where people told us they were jealous of how connected we seemed. Liam's 4th birthday party was planned for the last Saturday in September at our house. We invited about 20 kids from his preschool plus both sides of our families. Jade had spent weeks planning everything with a dinosaur theme because Liam was obsessed with velociraptors. We had decorations all over the backyard, and I'd rented a bounce house that cost way too much, but seeing Liam's face light up when the delivery truck showed up made it worth every penny. The party started around 2 in the afternoon, and everything was going great. The kids were running around screaming and playing, and the adults were hanging out by the food table, eating the themed cupcake Jade had special ordered. Jade's parents showed up with her brother Marcus and his wife Sienna. Marcus had always been kind of intense and dramatic, but I tolerated him because he was family. He had this way of making everything about himself that drove me crazy, but Jade always defended him, saying he meant well. About an hour into the party, I noticed Marcus and Jade having what looked like a serious conversation near the back fence. They were standing close together, and Jade looked upset. Her arms were crossed, and she kept shaking her head while Marcus gestured emphatically. I started walking over to see what was going on when Marcus suddenly grabbed a plastic cup and started tapping it like he was about to make a toast. Everyone got quiet and turned to look at him. Marcus had this weird smile on his face, and he said he wanted to make an announcement to celebrate a very special person at this party. I assumed he was going to say something nice about Liam, since it was his birthday. Instead, Marcus said he wanted to recognize the real father who'd given Jade such a beautiful son, and he gestured toward a guy standing near the drink table. The guy's name was Tyler, and I'd never seen him before in my life. He was probably around our age with dark hair and green eyes, and he was holding a beer looking incredibly uncomfortable. Jade's face went completely white, and her mom gasped so loud that several kids stopped playing to look. Marcus kept talking, saying it was time everyone knew the truth, and that Tyler deserved to be celebrated as Liam's biological father. I stood there completely frozen, trying to process what I was hearing. The entire backyard went silent, except for the kids who were still playing and didn't understand what was happening. One of Liam's preschool friends asked his mom why the man stopped talking, and she just pulled him closer. I looked at Jade and asked her if what Marcus just said was true. She started crying immediately and said we needed to talk privately. That was all the confirmation I needed. I told everyone the party was over and asked them to leave. My voice came out way calmer than I felt. Jade's dad started yelling at Marcus, asking what the hell he thought he was doing, and Tyler looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. Parents started gathering their kids and leaving while giving me sympathetic looks. One mom I barely knew squeezed my shoulder on her way out. Within 15 minutes, our backyard was empty except for me, Jade, Marcus, Jade's parents, and Tyler, who apparently had been invited by Marcus without me knowing. I asked Jade directly if Tyler was Liam's biological father, and she nodded while sobbing. I asked how long she'd known, and she said she'd suspected from the beginning, but had convinced herself I was the father because she wanted it to be true. Marcus jumped in, saying he'd figured it out 2 years ago when he saw Tyler at a restaurant and noticed how much he looked like Liam. He said he'd confronted Jade about it, and she'd admitted the affair, but begged him not to tell anyone. I asked why Marcus decided to announce it at our son's birthday party of all times, and he said he was tired of watching me raise another man's kid while Tyler got no credit. He said it wasn't fair that I got to play dad while the real father was kept in the dark. Jade's mom started screaming at Marcus, calling him cruel and stupid. Her dad looked like he was going to punch him, and honestly, I wouldn't have stopped him. Tyler finally spoke up and said he'd had no idea Marcus was going to make an announcement, and that he hadn't even known Jade was pregnant until Marcus contacted him 3 weeks ago. That detail made me feel sick. Marcus had orchestrated this whole thing and invited Tyler to the party specifically to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. I asked Tyler if he and Jade had been together while she and I were dating, and he said no. He said he'd hooked up with Jade once about 5 years ago at a conference in Atlanta, and that she told him it was a mistake and they'd never spoken again. I did the math in my head and realized that conference was 2 months before Liam was born, which meant Jade had cheated on me while she was married and pregnant, or right before she got pregnant. I asked her which it was, and she admitted she'd slept with Tyler right before she found out she was pregnant. She said she'd been stressed about some problems at work, and Tyler was there at the hotel bar, and it just happened. She said they'd had too much to drink, and she'd regretted it immediately. I asked if she'd known there was a chance Tyler was the father when Liam was born, and she said yes, but she'd hoped I was. She said she'd done the math, and there was a window where it could have been either of us. I asked why she never told me or suggested a paternity test, and she said she was terrified of losing me. She said she'd convinced herself that not knowing for sure was better than risking our marriage. Her dad told her she needed to give me space and started ushering the family out of the backyard. Marcus left still looking proud of himself like he'd done some noble thing. Tyler apologized again before following them out. He gave me his phone number and said to call him when I was ready to talk. I threw the piece of paper in the trash as soon as he left. Liam had been inside watching TV during all of this and had no idea what had just happened. I went inside and found him sitting on the couch eating birthday cake, completely oblivious to the fact that his entire family had just imploded. He asked where everyone went, and I told him some people had to leave early, but we'd celebrate more tomorrow. He seemed satisfied with that answer and went back to his show. Jade tried to talk to me that night, but I told her I needed time to think. I couldn't even look at her without feeling rage and betrayal washing over me. I slept in the guest room and spent most of the night staring at the ceiling trying to figure out what to do. The man I'd thought was my son for 4 years might not be biologically mine, and my wife had lied to me for our entire marriage. Every memory I had of Liam's birth and his first years felt tainted now. I kept thinking about all the moments I'd celebrated as his dad. His first word, which was dada. His first steps that he'd taken toward me in our living room. The way he'd reach for me when he was scared or tired. None of those moments had changed, but they felt different now, knowing there was a chance I had no biological connection to him. The next morning, I packed a bag and told Jade I was leaving for a while. She begged me to stay and work through it, but I said I couldn't be in the same house as her. Liam was still asleep, so I didn't have to explain why I was leaving with a suitcase. I kissed his forehead and walked out the door. Update, 2 weeks later. The 2 weeks after the party were the worst of my life. I moved out of our house and stayed with my best friend Austin while I tried to figure out my next steps. Austin had been my roommate in college, and he'd always been the kind of friend who asked questions later. He just gave me a spare room and a six-pack and let me process everything at my own pace. Jade called and texted, constantly begging me to come home and talk things through. Her messages started out apologetic, but as the days went on, they got more desperate. She sent me photos of Liam asking where I was and videos of him playing in the backyard. She knew I couldn't ignore anything involving him. I finally agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near our house on a Tuesday morning because I knew we had to start dealing with the practical aspects of this nightmare. Jade looked terrible when she showed up. She'd clearly been crying a lot, and she'd lost weight. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup, which was unusual for her. She immediately started apologizing and saying she never meant for any of this to happen. I told her the affair and lie weren't things that just happened. She'd made conscious choices to cheat on me and then hide the truth for 4 years. She said she knew what she'd done was unforgivable, but that she loved me and wanted to save our marriage. She said the thing with Tyler had been one night of weakness, and she'd spent every day since trying to be the best wife possible to make up for it. I asked her why she never came clean on her own, and she said she was scared of exactly what was happening now, that I'd leave her and Liam would grow up in a broken home. I pointed out that Liam was growing up in a broken home now anyway because of her choices. She flinched when I said that, but I didn't care. I asked if she'd had any contact with Tyler since the party, and she said no. She said Marcus had contacted Tyler without her knowledge, and that she'd been furious when she found out Marcus had been planning the announcement for weeks. I asked if she'd known Marcus suspected the truth for the past 2 years, and she admitted she had. She said Marcus had been pressuring her to tell me for a long time, but she kept putting it off, hoping the issue would just fade away. She said Marcus had become obsessed with the idea that Tyler deserved to know he had a son. That made me even angrier, because it meant she'd had multiple opportunities to be honest with me and had chosen to keep lying. I told her I wanted a paternity test to confirm whether Tyler was actually Liam's father. She agreed immediately and said she'd set it up. I could tell she was hoping the test would somehow prove I was Liam's dad, and this would all go away. The problem was I could see the truth in her eyes. She knew Tyler was the father, or she wouldn't have reacted the way she did at the party. The paternity test was scheduled for the following week at a lab downtown. Jade brought Liam in, and they swabbed his cheek while I provided a DNA sample. Liam thought it was a game and kept asking why we were putting sticks in our mouths. The lab tech said results would take 5 to 7 business days. Those days waiting for the results were torture, because part of me still hoped there'd been some mistake and Liam was mine. While waiting for the results, I met with a family lawyer named Patricia, who specialized in paternity cases. She was in her 50s with short gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude that I appreciated. She explained that even if the test showed I wasn't Liam's biological father, I might still be considered his legal father since I was married to Jade when he was born and my name was on the birth certificate. She said I'd have rights to custody and visitation regardless of biology if I wanted them. The technical term was presumed father, and it meant the law recognized my parental relationship even without genetic connection. I asked what would happen if Tyler wanted custody, and she said it would be complicated. Tyler would have to establish paternity legally and then petition for custody or visitation rights. She said courts generally prioritize stability for the child, so the fact that I've been raising Liam for 4 years would work in my favor if I wanted to maintain the relationship. She also warned me that if I decided to walk away completely, I might still be on the hook for child support since I was the legal father. That felt like adding insult to injury, but I understood the law was designed to protect the child, not the adults. That conversation made me realize I had a choice to make that had nothing to do with Jade. Regardless of whether Liam was biologically mine, I'd been his dad for 4 years. I changed his diapers and taught him to ride a bike and read him bedtime stories every night. I've been the one who sat with him when he had nightmares and took him to the doctor when he was sick. Biology didn't erase those 4 years, but I wasn't sure if I could stay in his life while dealing with the betrayal from Jade. The paternity test results came back 9 days after we'd done the test. The lab called and said they were ready for pickup. I drove to the lab alone to pick them up in a sealed envelope. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes before I had the courage to open it. My hand was shaking so bad, I almost ripped the envelope trying to get it open. The results confirmed what I already knew deep down. Tyler was Liam's biological father with a probability of 99.98%. I wasn't genetically related to the boy I call my son. Seeing it in writing made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I called Jade and told her I had the results. My voice was completely flat. She asked to meet in person, and I agreed to come by the house that evening after Liam was asleep. When I got there, she was waiting in the living room looking terrified. The house looked different to me now. Photos of our family on the walls felt like lies. I showed her the results, and she started crying again, saying she was so sorry. I told her sorry wasn't enough and that I contacted a divorce lawyer. Her face crumpled, and she begged me to reconsider and go to marriage counseling. I said the trust was completely destroyed, and there was no coming back from this. She asked what would happen with Liam, and I said I hadn't decided yet. I told her I needed more time to figure out if I could stay in his life, given everything that had happened. Jade panicked and said I couldn't just abandon Liam because he loved me and thought of me as his dad. I told her she should have thought about that before she slept with Tyler and lied for 4 years. She said she'd do anything to fix this, but I told her there was nothing she could do. The damage was done. I asked if she'd told Tyler about the paternity results, and she said Marcus had already told him. Apparently, Tyler had been calling Jade asking about meeting Liam and discussing some kind of custody arrangement. Jade said she told Tyler he needed to wait until things settled down, but he was getting impatient. That information made me realize this situation was about to get even more complicated. Tyler wasn't going to just disappear, and the longer I waited to make a decision about my relationship with Liam, the messier things would become. I asked Jade what Tyler was like, and she said she barely knew him. Their hookup had been a one-night thing, and they hadn't kept in touch. She said from what Marcus told her, Tyler was single and working as an accountant in the city. I told Jade I needed another week to think, and then left. Driving back to Austin's place, I felt completely numb. My mom called me the next day after Jade had apparently reached out to her. Mom said she'd been shocked by everything and that she still considered Liam her grandson regardless of biology. She said if I decided to walk away from the situation, she'd understand, but that she hoped I'd consider staying in Liam's life. I told her I was trying to figure out what was best for everyone, including myself. She reminded me that I've been talking about being a dad since I was a teenager and that Liam didn't stop being my son just because of a DNA test. That conversation stuck with me. My mom was right that being a parent was about more than genetics, but I didn't know if I was strong enough to co-parent with Jade and potentially Tyler for the next 14 years. Austin took me out for drinks that weekend, and I ended up telling him everything. He listened without interrupting and then said something that surprised me. He said the question wasn't whether Liam was my son, but whether I wanted to be his dad. He said those were two different things, and I needed to figure out which one mattered more to me. I've been so focused on the betrayal that I hadn't separated my feelings about Jade from my feelings about Liam. Final update, 3 months later. The 3 months since the birthday party have been the hardest of my life, but I've finally reached a place where I have some clarity. I filed for divorce from Jade in October, and we're currently going through the legal process. It's been messy and painful, but necessary. Our lawyers are handling most of the communication now, which makes things easier. The biggest decision I had to make was about Liam. After a lot of soul-searching and conversations with my lawyer and a therapist I decided I wanted to maintain a relationship with him. Biology doesn't define fatherhood, and I've been his dad since the day he was born. Walking away would have hurt him more than anyone else, and I couldn't do that to him. He didn't ask for any of this, and he deserved to have the father he'd always known. My lawyer helped me file for legal custody rights based on my established parental relationship. The court granted me shared custody with Jade, which means I have Liam every other weekend plus one evening during the week. It's not as much time as I had before, but it's something, and Liam seems to be adjusting okay. He was confused at first about why I didn't live at home anymore, but kids are resilient. Tyler has also been granted visitation rights after he established legal paternity. He sees Liam twice a month on weekends when I don't have him. Jade says those visits are awkward because Liam doesn't really understand who Tyler is. She's been telling him that Tyler is a friend of the family, which I think is a mistake, but it's not my call anymore. Eventually, Liam will figure out the truth, and I'd rather it come from honest conversations than more lies. The relationship between me and Jade is basically non-existent outside of necessary communication about Liam. We use a co-parenting app to coordinate schedules, and we're civil when we have to interact at pickup and drop off. She's tried a few times to have deeper conversations about what happened, but I've shut that down. There's nothing left to say that would change anything. Marcus is no longer welcome in my life or around Liam when he's with me. I told Jade that Marcus's presence is a deal breaker for my custody arrangement, and she agreed. Apparently, her parents have also cut back on contact with Marcus because they're furious about what he did. Jade's mom called me in November to apologize for her son's behavior and to tell me she still thought of me as family. That meant more than I expected it to. His wife, Sienna, actually reached out to apologize and said she'd had no idea Marcus was planning the announcement. She said she'd been mortified and had spent the rest of the party crying in their car. She and Marcus have apparently been in marriage counseling because she's considering leaving him over the stunt he pulled. The divorce should be finalized by January. We've agreed to split our assets 50-50, and I'm buying out Jade's half of the house since I want to keep it. It's the house where I brought Liam home as a newborn and where we've made so many memories. Losing my marriage doesn't mean I have to lose the home too. Jade's moving into an apartment closer to her parents, which honestly is probably better for everyone. The financial aspect of the divorce has been straightforward at least. We didn't have much in terms of savings, but we've split everything down the middle. I'm keeping the house and taking on the full mortgage, which is tight on my salary, but manageable if I'm careful. The hardest part of all of this has been explaining things to Liam in an age-appropriate way. He knows Daddy doesn't live at home anymore, and he knows Mommy and Daddy aren't married anymore. He's asked a few times why I left, and I've told him that sometimes grown-ups need to live separately, but that I still love him very much. He seems to accept that for now, but I know there will be harder conversations as he gets older. Last weekend, when I picked him up for my custody time, he ran to me yelling Daddy and wrapped his arms around my legs. Moments like that remind me why I'm fighting to stay in his life. Whatever anger I have toward Jade doesn't change the fact that this little boy is my son in every way that matters. I've started seeing someone new, which surprised me. Her name is Rachel, and she's a teacher at Liam's preschool. We started talking at a parent event in November and discovered we had a lot in common. She's 29 and teaches the 4-year-old class. She knew about my situation because the birthday party disaster had become gossip among the preschool parents. She approached me after the event and said she was sorry for what I was going through. We exchanged numbers and started texting. Our first date was coffee, which turned into a 3-hour conversation. She's been incredibly understanding about everything and hasn't pushed me to move faster than I'm ready for. It's early, and I'm taking things slow, but it feels good to have someone in my life who doesn't come with betrayal and lies. She makes me laugh, which is something I haven't done enough of lately. Jay found out about Rachel through the preschool grapevine and sent me a long text about how I was moving on too fast and being disrespectful. She said it looked bad that I was dating someone from Liam's school and that people were talking. I didn't respond because my personal life isn't her business anymore. She lost the right to have an opinion when she destroyed our marriage. Looking back on everything, I still can't believe Jade kept this secret for 4 years. I understand people make mistakes, but the continued lying and the fact that she only admitted the truth because Marcus forced her hand makes it unforgivable. If she'd come to me on her own, even a year ago, we might have been able to work through it. The betrayal was bad, but the years of deception were worse. My relationship with Liam is different now, but it's still strong. He hugs me tight when I pick him up for my weekends, and he still calls me Daddy. Those moments make all the legal battles and emotional pain worth it. I'm his father in every way that matters, and no paternity test can change that. I've been there for every milestone, and I plan to be there for every future one. I've also learned that family isn't always about blood. My parents have continued to treat Liam as their grandson, and my brother brings his kids over to play with Liam when he's at my house. They've all made it clear that Liam is still part of our family, and that means everything to me. My niece who's 6 told me that Liam is her favorite cousin and asked why he doesn't live with me all the time. Kids see things so simply. Tyler has tried to reach out to me twice to talk about co-parenting with him and Jade, but I've declined both times. I'm willing to be civil for Liam's sake, but I have no interest in a relationship with the man my wife cheated with. My lawyer says that's perfectly reasonable and that I'm not obligated to coordinate with Tyler directly. All communication can go through Jade. From what Jade tells me, Tyler is trying to be involved, but struggling with the reality that he's a stranger to Liam. Apparently, Liam cried during their second visit because he wanted to come home. Tyler means well, but you can't manufacture 4 years of relationship. He's realizing that being a biological father doesn't automatically make you a dad. The biggest lesson I've learned from this whole nightmare is that honesty is everything in a relationship. Jay destroyed our marriage not just because she cheated, but because she lied about it for years. If she'd been honest from the start, we could have dealt with it together. Instead, she made choices that protected herself and left me to deal with the consequences. I'm still angry, and I probably will be for a long time. But I'm also moving forward with my life. I have a house I love, a son who loves me, and the possibility of a future with someone who values honesty. Jade has to live with the consequences of her choices, and that's not my problem anymore. She threw away a good marriage and a family because she was too afraid to tell the truth. There are still hard days where I wonder what my life would look like if Marcus had never made that announcement. Would Jade have ever told me the truth, or would I have lived my whole life not knowing? Part of me thinks Marcus did me a favor in a twisted way, because living a lie is worse than living with a painful truth. I'm rebuilding my life one day at a time and focusing on being the best father I could be to Liam. He's starting kindergarten next year, and I plan to be at every parent-teacher conference and school event, just like I always would have been. Being his dad isn't something I'm giving up just because we don't share DNA.